Yo, what's going on, fellow investors and collectors? Today, I thought we'd have a little chat about some singles that I think might pop off in 2026. Without further ado, let's get right on into it. Let me switch screens here. All right, first of all, we have the big boy, Fat Pika, Chunky Chew as they call him. This is from Vivid Voltage. If you were back in the hobby 3 to 4 years ago, they printed Vivid Voltage into the ground. This was an extremely expensive card at release. You got to think we're coming off of the heels of COVID and everyone, the lockdowns, all of that junk. And this card was higher than the chart shows, the 1 year chart. It was several $100s at release. The hype was insane. People were getting back into cards back then because they were tended to be at home more often with the COVID virus. So Pokemon boomed, and Vivid Voltage was one of those sets, headlined by none other than this Chunky Chew card. And by the way, I put this on the list because Rainbow Rares were not very appreciated last era in Sword and Shield. This is probably by far the best one of the era, I would say. I don't can't think of the top of my head a more expensive Rainbow Rare card, but um, yes, after COVID, after a couple years, this card did tank. As you can see, it was a several $100 card way back when. Most recently, past year, it was still up around 170ish, and it's dropped to around 140. I still think it's a good pickup at 140. They're not making Vivid Voltage, obviously, anymore, by far. Pikachu's the mascot of the hobby. I think this is a sleeper that could do some damage. If you've got a couple copies of this card, I don't think you'll regret it. I don't really see this getting. It's already kind of in that low-ish 100 range. I can't see this getting much lower. It's and if there is a resurgence of a newfound appreciation of a lot of these rainbow rare cards from the last couple eras, there's no doubt I believe this will be one of them that skyrockets because it's really the most popular one. So we've got that one. Moving on to a few in Fusion Strike, the set Fusion Strike from the last era. We've got the Mew V Alt Art. Now, for those of you who don't know, pull rates for V alternate arts were a certain percentage, and then there's a V Max alternate art, which is a upper rarity that were even harder to pull. So the V Max's alt arts were harder to pull than the V's. This is a V alt art. They did make a V Max version of the set, but if we look at the 1 year chart for Mew here, it was pretty low early on in the year. Had a big spike in the summer, which most cards, most singles did. And if you haven't heard me say this before, yes, singles are more volatile. But I figured I do like to collect some singles, some for value, some just because I like the cards. Whether they go up and down or not. One of my favorite cards right now is Executor, the SIR version in Surging Sparks. Is that card ever going to do some major long-term damage? Probably not. But I just love the card. I love the art, and I've got a couple copies of it. So it's not always about making money, but in this video, I'm trying to identify some that I think could pop off this year. And I do believe, even at the high price tag of around $90 market, you can see just a couple months ago, it was around near 100. It had a few sales at around $150. So insane drop. And if you didn't know, the last couple months, November, December of last year, did have several. I mean, basically the whole market dropped. Sealed product, singles, and this card has dropped from 150 down to well below 100. I mean, it's dropped 40%, I'd say, somewhere in that range. If you can pick this card up in the $80 range, plus or minus, I think it's a steal. I could easily see this card getting back to its high, 1 year high of around 150 later on this year. So that's one I think could do some damage. Sticking with Fusion Strike. No, I'm not picking the VMAX Alt Art. I think that's already done a lot of damage on its way up. I don't know how much higher that could go. Um, we're at filtering high to low right now. This one I'm identifying. I just love the artwork. A lot of people do too. A lot of people think this is underappreciated. Celebi's kind of a mythical fairy. I know it's not the most popular, but if we look at the 1 year chart, it's a V alt art. Similar story. Had a really big spike of around $70. Now, obviously, the best time to buy would have been over a year ago, a couple years ago, when it was probably in the $30, $40 range. But as far as today goes, I mean, it had a spike at this September range of around nearly $80, spiked back down to around 55. It's climbed back up a few bucks, hitting it around low 60s. I think this is a good buy. If you can get one for around the $60 range, knowing that it was just recently near 80, I mean that's a 25% drop more or less. I think this card could easily get to $100 later this year. Um, as always, these are predictions. No one ever knows really what's going to happen, and if they do tell you that, they're just lying. No one really knows what's going to happen because cards get released. Sometimes, like this, it wasn't very popular. And then, as new people enter the hobby and leave, and public sentiment and opinion can change. I've seen it happen on tons and tons of cards. Just one that pops into mind, for example, would be Evolving Skies Umbreon. Not the VMAX, not the Moonbreon, just the V Alt Art. It was a $50 to $80 card for the longest time after release. And then all of a sudden, whatever changed, maybe it was some famous content creator that was hyping it up. I don't know. But the card just skyrocketed insanely high. So cards can do that. Cards can be fickle. They can jump up just as high, but keep in mind, just a warning for investors, they can also have massive declines just as fast. So that's kind of the cyclical nature, the ups and downs of singles, but they can pay off if you're strategic. I think this is a good one strategically that has a chance to pop off in the $80 to $90 range maybe later this year. That's where I would see it at potentially. Another one here, a couple more, kind of a lesser known Inteleon VMAX. So the VMAX version of these alt arts are harder to pull. And I know this isn't a super fan favorite. It's the final evolved of one of the recent starters from a few eras ago. But if you look at the chart, 1 year, it is obviously the time to buy would have been earlier this year at around the $20 range. But it has had steady growth. And during this November, December time when most cards saw massive drops, this one didn't really drop at all. Now, the advantage I would say as an investor you would have is you find a bunch of clean copies of this card. This isn't a super hot seller, so maybe you can negotiate that down. Hey, if you see it for 32, maybe offer them 25 just to try to get a few bucks off the price. If you can do that, I just love the art. I think it's awesome with his snipe shot attack there. It just looks cool to me. I hope y'all would agree, and I do believe this one could get to maybe a $50 card later this year. So that's to me one of the sleepers of this set. And the final one of Fusion Strike we want to look at here is going to be the Genesect. It was dubbed a nickname for this card, the Breakdancing Genesect, because it does look like he's breakdancing. And it just, for whatever reason, I know it's not the most popular Pokemon, but it just hasn't been very well received. It's always hovered between that $20 to $30 mark as long as I can remember. It's had highs as around 35. And take a look. Like most cards, it dipped in November, December, the last few months. And it's not at an all-time low for the year, but it is dang near it. All-time low at around 20. And it's hovering low 20s right now. I mean, there's in the new Black Bolt White Flare set, one of the two has a Genesect alt art. They call them SIRs now, of course, but that card, which is 3 months old, 4 months old, is more expensive than this one. And I'm pretty sure the V alt arts were a much harder pull rate than the SIR for the Black Bolt set now, which I think that's what it came out of. So, not the most well-known artist, but a breakdancing card. It's got its own nickname, like I said, Breakdancing Genesect. I don't know how this card is still sitting at around $20. I'm gonna try next local card show to find this card and try to pick up a copy or two for that price. To me, it's one of those that just buy it. If you've got the spare dollars and you like the card, get it. It's got a cameo. I forget the name of this one, but it's got a cameo of another Pokemon in the background, and it's not the greatest art ever, but it isn't the worst. And at $20, I just don't see how you can go wrong with the alt art from Sword and Shield era. It's pretty cool there, so I do like that one. Moving on to the next, we are going to look at celebrations. Why? For obvious reasons, right? The 30th anniversary is upon us. I believe as the recording of this video, the week of, checking my calendar, the week of January 30th is when they're going to have the first release of the 30th anniversary set. I don't know what product that's going to look like. I think it's the first is just a promo card of Pikachu with a stamp promo with a 30th stamp on it, but celebration. So a few cards here to look at, and that is, first off, is going to be the Mew. I think Mew has potential to pop off. It's obviously a fan favorite. It's gold. It was extremely hard. I remember opening celebrations back in the day a few years ago, and this card was so hard to pull. It just seemed like we couldn't pull it. Has had some retraction. It was up near $70 at a few sales, and it has since dipped down to below $50. So you're buying at a discount. With this year being the 30th, I think all celebrations cards should see a spike, but I think there's a lot of upside here with this one dipping so much recently. Another one to look at is right next to it. Two reasons. The 30th this year, and Pokemon, second reason, has announced that there might be an Emerald set that they branded or trademarked for later this year. That could mean we're getting another Rayquaza card. If that happens, then all the other Rayquaza, however you pronounce it, all the previous iterations of this character probably will see a spike. That tends to happen. It happened with the announcement of Obsidian Flames, and then more recently Phantasmal Flames, how previous Charizards saw a spike. And I think that can happen with this card as well, because of the 30th and because of that potential new set featuring him. So, looking at the 1 year, not super great. It hasn't really dipped, but you could say that is just signs of strength. It has consistently rose, and well, this chart's a little wonky. Really, the market is saying is around 36. I recently picked one of these up at a card show a couple months ago for somewhere around this $30 to $40 range. So if you can find it, it may have been 50-ish. So there were a few sold at this price. So this market price probably just has an updated $50 range. It's a bit high, but this one's, I would say, is a little more risky, but gambling off the potential of the new Rayquaza set plus the 30th, I think this one's got some upside. You can't go wrong with Pikachu ever. I know some of us get tired of seeing him, but this picture doesn't do it justice. It just absolutely pops in person. It's an awesome card. The texturing is great on this. I've got a few copies of it myself from way back when. It wasn't the hardest card to pull. I mean, we pulled a few of them and maybe, I don't know, 100 plus packs that we opened back in the day. But looking at the 1 year, steady growth, steady strength. I still think at $12, or let's see, lowest listed is somewhere in the 20s. So $20 to $25 I think is not bad, because it is hard to pull. And if we look here, yeah, near mint's going to be somewhere more in the low 30s. I still think that can be an awesome pickup long term. I could see this later on in the year being a $50 card because Pikachu's the mascot. And just mentioning earlier about the set spike, the recent black and white features Zekrom and Reshiram. And if you look at the 1 year, this card was sitting before the announcement of black and white somewhere in the $10 to $12 range. It did have a big spike up to 20-ish dollars. So it saw a 25 to 40% increase, and I believe a lot of this growth is because of the black and white set that came out, the announcement of it. Now, it, like most others, did see a retraction late in the year, but it is climbing back up. So that's the kind of bounce that some new set announcements can have on some cards. A few others, just to run through it quickly, I still think Magikarp. I know this is just kind of a reprint from the Neo series way back when. If we're looking at the 1 year, this one has dipped. So some $45 to $50 sales, even as high as $60. If you can get this card under 40 right now, I mean, 60 down to 40, that's a 33% drop. I think you're buying at a really good time with this one. It can only go up with the release of the 30th, in my opinion. A couple other ones. Now, I'm not going to say Charizard's ever a bad buy, but it's kind of at an all-time high right now. Sitting at around $150, $140. You can catch some of these locally, maybe on Marketplace or OfferUp or your local card shops, maybe around, if you're lucky, around the 130 range. I don't believe this is going to have a ton of potential this year for growth. Like, I don't see it doubling by the end of the year. But some of these lower level ones, is it really going to be a 300 card in the near future? Eventually, yes. But if we're thinking short-term gains, I would be leaning more toward the other two big three. At $10 to $15, this card could easily, by the end of the year, be a $20 to $25 card. And you're doubling your money if you get this around the $12 range. Same with Venusaur. Venusaur, I think, is in the similar boat, around the same price, around that 12 to 10. It's actually a little cheaper than Blastoise. Blastoise does tend to get a little more love than Venusaur, I guess, on the pricing. More people like him, I guess. But if you can get this card for $10, even maybe 8 or 9, I mean, that's not going to be that much to double to 20, 18 to $20. And I think you'll be happy. I think this card can easily do that later this year. To a lesser extent, these were pretty easy to pull, the surfing and the flying Pikachu VMAXs. But if you get clean copies for $3 or $4, like, you can't even buy a booster pack. Even back in the day, booster packs were like $4 for celebrations. Now I don't even know what they are, probably $20 or more a pack. But I think these could be some good buys if you can get them in the $2 to $3 to $4 range. I wouldn't mind picking up more copies of these, because could these easily be later this year? I could see them being $7 to $10 cards, and you've essentially doubled your money if you had a bunch of copies of this. So I think that's a good play if you want to attempt to make it. All right, so moving on, we've got another not too old, not too new set, Chilling Reign, specifically the Galarian birds. Now, everyone seems to love, where is it at? Moltres is the best. And it's an awesome card, that's a fair opinion. But market price, I don't really know. It's all over the place. It's under $100 card. It says market price is $72, but if we filter to near mint, that's the thing with some of these older cards. There's not many on the market. You can't even find a near mint under $100. So I think this card is definitely appreciated. So that's why I'm going to shy away from this one and stick to its brother-sister counterparts, which is starting with Zapdos. I think Zapdos, you got to remember, if you haven't been around when Chilling Reign was out, the nickname for it was Chilling Pain. Why? Because pull rates were just atrocious. They were horrible. So you got to think, just pulling a V card felt like a victory. A V Max. These are alternate arts. They're just so much. It's kind of got a cartoony vibe, but they were so much harder to pull. So, having a look at the chart, not many sales either. So, it's not the most liquid card, but if you can seriously get one for under $40, if we filter to near mint, okay, so we've got a couple with not, well, these have a few solid sales, high sales sellers. 35 bucks, 35 bucks, and then that's kind of the you buy those up, the floor then becomes $50. So there's only two more at that price. If you want to grab those last two, have at it. You heard it here first. I believe this can easily be a $60 card later this year. I think it's got the potential to do it, especially if you can find it under 40 bucks. Insane card for an insane price. A little bit more expensive. I do have one copy of this. I love it. It's an awesome card in person. And that's the thing. With all these cards, you're not seeing the texturing, the shine, and this just pops in person like a lot of the other ones do. Looking at the 1 year, I'm seeing a big dip, which to me signals time to buy. That means you can get something on a discount. This card was selling at one period of time from the $70 to $100 range. It is down with a market price of just above 50 bucks. If you can get this card in the $40 to $50 range, maybe at a local card show or something, I think it's a great pickup for a great artwork, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. I think this can do some major work later this year with some increases and appreciation. Where would I predict this one by the end of the year, mid-year? I'm going to say if you can get it for around 50 now, I could easily see this being a $75 card in the near future. All right, so rounding out the last of the list, we're going to look at some promos. If I can find the page. I thought I had the page, so alright, we're just going to search right now for it. I forgot to bookmark the page, so we've got an SV promos. There was several on the list. A few we're going to look at. Before we actually do that, I think 151 has the potential. There's one specific card I'm bullish on. Maybe no one else is. But it's the Giovanni's Charisma Special Illustration Rare, if I can even find it. Right here. It's got Persian as a cameo. It's got Pokeballs and things in the background. I think it's an awesome card. It's an SIR. It's got texture. If you can find this card around the $10 to $11 range, to me it's a no-brainer. I think it's got nowhere to go except up. So I do have several copies of this. I try to get one every card show I get to. I mean, hey, if you can get it for 10 bucks, I don't think you can go wrong with that. I know trainers historically haven't done very well, a lot of them in recent history, but I think Giovanni could be an exception. And with Persian, I think this card could pop off. So that's one of my sleeper picks for 2026 for 151. All right, promo. Best way to get to this. This is what I'm looking for. I'm specifically looking at, you got to think, Scarlet and Violet, new era, correct? Silver, the gray borders or silver borders were newly introduced. The yellow borders went away. The first set was base, the Scarlet and Violet. These two promos here, Miraidon, I think was the Violet promo, and they're cheap. They're just cheap, $3 to $4. Now I know you can go, if you're a big baller, you can go with the stamped version of these. Koraidon, I believe, was in the Scarlet set as a promo. If you can get these cards for $2 to $3 to $4 near mint, why wouldn't you want them? They're illustration style cards. They're great artworks. They're featured heavily in the SV era. And just think, young kids now that grew up on this era, they're playing the games, right? Miraidon and Koraidon are some of their favorites because those are the OGs to them because that's what all they know. In 10 to 15 years, when those kids become adults and have jobs of their own, they're going to look back like most of us do at my age at base set with nostalgia. They're going to look back at Scarlet and Violet and probably have that same nostalgia. So I would love to have multiple copies of this Miraidon and Koraidon in my binder just for a rainy day. You never know what this is going to do in the future. It may not pop off big time in 2026. Maybe you get a bunch of copies for $3 to $4. Maybe it increases to like 7, something like that. That's still near double your money. And if you can hold on to them even longer, I think it's even better. Long term, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. Another one I wanted to mention is Team Rocket's Wobbuffet. You've got some Rocket members. You've got Wobbuffet. I wish Jesse and James would have made it into this set. This is, I believe, the Destined Rivals ETB promo, SVP 201, and still very, very cheap. Now, I know you can get the stamp version for a lot more, and it's a lot more highly exclusive. So if you've got more money, I just think the normal versions are so cheap. You there's nowhere to go but up, in my opinion. Another one in this category, one of the most popular artists that people mention nowadays is Shinji Kanda. He did this artwork. He did the Giratina from Lost Origin and a lot of other fan favorites, Seismitoad more recently from Black Bolt. But this is a promo. You get it guaranteed in every Surging Sparks ETB. And I think it's criminally undervalued. This is probably one of my top ones at, $5 to $6. If you can get this in the $4 or under dollar range, I think it's a steal. I'd love to have just a whole page, 9 or 12 page of the binder full of these cards. I think you won't go wrong at the under $5 price point. Because think about it, with all the awesome sets they're releasing nowadays, Ascended Heroes about to be the next one here in a couple weeks, or a week actually. This coming week. They're probably not going to dedicate a lot of print capacity to Surging Sparks anymore. So you may not see very many more ETBs of Surging on the open market on the store shelves. If that's the case, this Magneton may spike pretty heavily here in 2026. So you may want to buy some of these up now while they're still $5 and under. That pretty much does it. There's a couple more honorable mentions. The Victini. Why? Because this card was pretty hyped during the box release. It was selling, in some cases, around $20, which is as much as the Victini box cost at MSRP. But it has dropped heavily from nearly $18 to $20 down to $7 to $8. It has dropped 60-70%. When you see a card do that, that's probably near the bottom of what it's going to be. There's no texturing on this. It's just an illustration rare, but it is an awesome card. I've got one or two in the binder myself, and if I see some in this $7 to $7 and below dollar range at the next card show or one of your local card shops, or maybe you're trading with a friend, pick some of these up. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. These illustration boxes, they just come and go fleetingly, and they're here one day, gone the next. So they likely won't reprint that box, which has this card in it, so you're probably never going to see it again. I believe the Victini, they called it the Lenovo illustration box. It had a couple Black Bolt White Fair plaques in it, including this one. You don't see it on shelves anymore. You don't see anything on shelves. I get that. But when it came out, it was there one day, gone the next. And a month later, if you're waiting in line to see new product, this wasn't there. So they didn't make a ton of these boxes. I'd be shocked if you see more of them on the shelves. So for that reason, I think this is a really solid pickup. I think I'm pretty bullish on this. I think this card could easily get back to $15 to $20 range price point probably later this year. Don't know if that'll happen for sure, but at $7 a card, you really can't go wrong if you've got the spare change. One more I wanted to mention here is the second set of SV Era Paldea Evolved. The ETB promo is this Pikachu, SVP027. The market price on it right now is right around $6. And I think I've got one, maybe two copies myself. I'm going to target this one at the next show. The card is Pikachu, but this generation starters, Fuecoco, Quaxley, Sprigatito, you don't see this very often where you've got every starter of the new era featured on a card with the mascot, Pikachu. So for those reasons, I love the card. It's an illustration rare. There's no texture. But I don't think you can go wrong at the $6 price point. So I love the pickup. If you can find this around $5 all day long, drop one of those. Is it Lincoln on the $5 bill? Drop a Lincoln every time you see. If you've got some extra Lincolns in your wallet, drop them on this card. This, I don't believe you can go wrong with it. I could easily see this card 3 to 4xing this year. Keep in mind, another layer to this. Paldea Evolved is basically not getting reprinted at all anymore. But the hard deadline for it going out of rotation for Paldea Evolved in that first block of SV is the end of April. That's only 3 months away. So a lot of cards are probably going to spike. Booster boxes, sealed product, Paldea Evolved, everything is going to spike, just like all the other sets in that block will. And I believe this is a staple. Get it now. You heard it here first. Get this card now while it's still dirt cheap. You can't even buy. You walk into Target or Walmart. If you're lucky enough to find packs, the packs are $4.50 MSRP, but Target and Walmart typically have packs for $5 a piece. You're basically getting this card guaranteed for the same price of a pack if you can find it in the $5 to $6 range. Pick the card up. I don't think you'll be disappointed. To me, taking a deep breath, stepping back, and thinking, what would I buy? I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and I'm going to try to buy a few copies, if I can, this year of every one of these cards. But which ones do I think have the most potential to pop off? I can narrow it down to two. And to me, it's the card we just talked about, this one. I think this can easily be similar Pikachu cards from SV Era have been selling $10, $20, $30 range. I can easily see this card being $20 by toward the end of this year. And if you're getting them at $5 a piece, you just $4 extra money. Where are you going to do that in the stock market in a 6 to 8 month period of time? Probably nowhere. So this is probably number one or number two. And then I'm also very bullish on another cheap card. The second one, if I'm going in heavy, is going to be this Magneton. Why? Surging Sparks is probably not going to get a lot of printing attention now with all these new sets coming out. Think about it. They've got to try to reprint Mega and Phantasmal and Ascended Heroes. And they continue to just pump out Prismatic, even though the flames never seem to be quenched. The ETBs still hold a premium at around $120 range, no matter how many they print. Bundles are starting to spike now with Prismatic. All of these awesome sets, some of the sets like Temporal, Twilight Masquerade, Journey Together, um, probably Black and White, and probably Surging Sparks are going to fall by the wayside, I have a feeling. So if that happens, you better go ahead and just buy a few copies of this now while you can. This kind of has a cult following with Shinji Kanda, and it's just another reason why for collectability. And if you can find this card, even up to like the $7 range, just on here, if we filter to near mint, you can pick up copies of right now for around $5. So there's no reason why at your local card shop, or if you're trading online or trading with friends, maybe a card show locally, I don't see why you couldn't get multiple copies of this. Market is around $5. So to me, those are my two big picks. Because let's face it, most of us don't have deep pockets to just go walk into a card show and buy 20 copies of the Celebration Charizard that's selling for $150 each. But could most of us, save up some money, $50 to $100, walk into a card show? You can walk away with 10, maybe 20 copies of this card. Same with the one I just mentioned, the Pikachu SVP027. You could walk into a card show and at the $5 price point with just a $100 bill, walk away with probably 15 to 20 copies of this card. I think you won't regret it if you decide to do that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I would never tell y'all to invest in something that I wouldn't buy myself. That's just how I operate. Hope y'all enjoyed the content. Like and subscribe on the way out if you don't mind. I appreciate it so much. And if not, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.